Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday. Nice, bright, sunny day. We'll start a meeting with the invocation. We have Jim Abel with us today to lead that.
Father, we ask for your blessings upon this room, Lord, that there would be peace here, Father, that the decisions and the hearts would be open to your will and your guidance. Psalm 119 says, "Blessed are those who keep his statutes and seek him with all their heart." Lord, I ask for your protection over the commissioners. I ask for your protection over the staff people that work in this building, Lord. And we ask that you bless all those that live and work in Cowlitz County. In your great name, Lord Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Those who'd like to join me with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You notice we're down one commissioner today. He's feeling a little bit under the weather, so we're probably not going to see Commissioner Farrell today. I'd entertain a motion for the minutes of September 15th to 17th.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes of September 15th to 17th. Any comments, corrections? Hang on a second, I got it. Okay. There was a chat, but it was something else. Okay. See none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I'll run down consent agenda. Call for bids. First item is for 3,000 tons of 5/8 minus rock and 500 tons of 1 1/4 minus rock. That will be stockpiled at our road shops in Longview, Kelso, and Kalama. The call for bids is scheduled for October 13th, 2025 at 1:30. Request for qualifications for as-needed civil engineering services to provide civil engineering services for county road projects. Scheduled for October 22nd, 2025. We're at the end of a 3-year contract. Last contract we signed was 2022. So it's every so often we like to go back out for another bids or qualifications for that. Just give you an idea of how much we use these people to help us over the last 3 years. I think we've spent about roughly $2.5 million on their services. Call for a public hearing. The state of Washington has changed some RCW numbers. It affects some of the code numbers that we have. So call for a public hearing, adopting an ordinance reflecting codification of amendment by the State Office of Code Revisor to RCW 36-.32-.120, renumbering it as 36.32.120. So we'll be changing this. This call for public hearing is for us to, we're not changing code, we're just changing the numbers. Agreements, contracts, bid awards, personal service agreement with Everly Vivian Helmsman to provide workers' compensation administrative services for the period of October 1st, 2025 to September 30th, 2026. Total amount is $36,316.78. We put a contract out once a year for this service. They help us with a lot of our workers' comp, the paperwork and all that kind of stuff with it. This is, I think I was told, about a 3% increase from last year. Okay. Board correspondence, affidavit of posting resume for the month of August 2025. Letter dated 9/15/25 to Monica Peterson. Executive Assistant Clerk of the Board with the Cowlitz County PUD, disclosing that no tax levy will be required for the year 2026. Letter dated 9/23/25 to Bobby Day, appointing her to the Homeless Housing Task Force. 2-year term that expires into September 2027. Letter dated 9/3/25 to Tina Smith, appointing her to the Rural Marshall County Library District Board of Trustees, representing position number 3. 5-year term expires end of December 2030. And last week we had vouchers in the amount of $4,061,461.59. That's consent agenda. Any questions, comments on it? Let me see none. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve consent agenda of September 23rd.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Last call. See none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We have one motion item today, Public Works.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. Good to see everybody today. We have one motion item for your consideration today. It is a change order for the Eric Creek Culvert Project. That was a 2025 construction project that we finished up earlier this year. And we have been working with the contractor Active Construction to finalize the last change order. It was based on delays by utilities, having issues getting the utilities out of the way. We ended up to an agreement of 21 days of delays by the utilities and some procurement issues. So that added a cost of $45,138.98. And that was based on their lump sum for temporary traffic control and the temporary traffic signal, and then some extensions and extra equipment that had to be purchased for the bypass system for the creek due to the raised in the water level by the time we were out there. So this will be the closeout change order for this project, and then we can close out the project. There were 3 change orders prior to this, all at no cost. 2 were paperwork exercises with WashDOT for changing different programs that are a requirement, and then there was a deduct for an additional training that we had to do.
Any questions on this?
Susan, I wasn't here yesterday. What was the reason for the delay in the utilities, and whose responsibility was that?
So excuse me, when you're a utility within the public right-of-way, you are required to move when a project comes about. So we had built in a few days for the utilities to move during the project. Once the contractor did specific work, we had a utility shutdown. And during that shutdown, Cowlitz PUD came and did their work efficiently, got out of the way, but we were waiting for a lumen. They were very difficult to deal with, and we finally got them out of the way. And that was the 21 days delay. Lumen, they're a cable provider.
Do we hold them accountable for the fact that this cost us an extra $45,000 because they didn't do their job efficiently?
So that is something that I'll have to discuss with the attorney on how, if and how we can go back, moving that forward. At that time, we were not the only county having issues. I spoke to some of my other counterparts, and they had changed management. They were insisting that they were a telecom, and franchise stuff didn't apply to them. So there were a lot of issues, and I know a couple other counties had large delays during that same time period that I believe they have rectified based on everybody going, this is not the way it works. We do send out every year when you guys adopt the 6-year plan in December. That gets sent out to the utilities so that they can see what our upcoming plans are. We also send plans to utilities that are specifically affected by projects at the 50% design phase with our schedule of when we're going out to bid so that they can plan appropriately also.
It took a couple urgings from our legal staff to get them to move.
When you said
Get
the
'em out
name,
there.
that-
Yes.
Yeah.
rang a bell.
So this really isn't a contractor issue. The contractor did their work. We're just kind of making them whole for the
Yes,
extra
for the
time.
extra
And
time.
if we feel like it's worthwhile going after Lewin, that's on us.
Yes.
Yeah. Any questions, other questions on that?
Yeah.
I just want to clarify stuff because I wasn't at the beginning of this project. First, this stream bypass system, I mean, we actually needed it, right? It was said that, okay, we have fish in this project, the stream, it's guaranteed that we have fish in this stream and we need this bypass, correct?
Correct. This particular project was 100% funded by the Protect program, which is building resilience. Oh, I forgot what Protect acronym stands for, but it's 100% funded and it was a fish passage barrier removal project. This has been originally the project was designed by the Cowlitz tribe. So this is Eric Creek is out Abernathy Creek way. So this is one of the tributaries to Abernathy Creek. So this, they said as soon as they removed the bypass, within days, they had salmon going up that stream. Everybody was really surprised to see it that quickly.
Okay, well, I'm so glad you said that. Again, like I've mentioned in the past, I've noticed that we've done some improvement on places that don't have fish. And, you know, I'm conservative, so thank you for that.
Any other questions on this particular project? Okay, seeing none, I entertain the motion.
Motion to approve motion item number 6 is presented by staff.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the change order for the Eric Creek Fish Passage. Last chance for questions. Go ahead, Ron.
Just a quick follow-up to the previous speaker. Yes, when we spend $2 million on something like this, I would hope that we do get some reports later on about the fish improvement and that, you know, we had 10 fish pass through at $2 million for 10 or whatever. And so getting follow-up on what progress we are making. So, you know, over time. So please.
And actually, Ron, these, to your point about these, on the Fish Recovery Board, they give us, that we get information on these projects that are done and what the results are afterwards.
So
we
you,
do get 'em.
you're on the fish board or whatever, so you'll get that kind of reporting.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, any other question, comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Of course, at 10 today, we have a workshop on Mount St. Helens. So we'll do that today. Next Tuesday's Board of Health meeting has been canceled. So there'll be no Board of Health meeting next Tuesday at 10. October 7th, speaking of Fish Recovery Board, Lower Columbia Fish Recovery Board will be in at 10 o'clock on Tuesday, the 7th. Tuesday, the 21st, we have two things. Department of Ecology will be in at 10 o'clock. And the local homeless housing plan will be presented at 11. This afternoon, if you're following along with budget stuff, this afternoon, starting at 1:30, we have commissioners, coroner, parks and rec. Tomorrow, starting at 2:30, we have non-department finance, auditor, and clerk's office. Go ahead.
Just a question. I wondered why the Board of Health meeting had been canceled.
Because they didn't have, HHS didn't have an agenda items. They didn't have anything really. I think they've been working on this housing plan and doing that. So there really wasn't a lot of stuff to put on the agenda. So he
Okay.
canceled it for that month.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay. We'll open it up to the public, whatever you have. Well, when we advertise at a time, then we're kind of stuck at that time. You know, I'm not disagreeing with you, Flo. I just know when we advertise a time, then people will show up at 10 and we'll get beat up for that. Mr. Kaiser.
Well, I'm glad I heard that walking up here because you're not kind of stuck at that. You are absolutely stuck at that time.
Yeah.
Certain.
Yeah.
And this board, make up you and some of your predecessor, fellow board members in the past, were pretty nonchalant about following that time certain, which in addition to opening the meeting on time certain, following those motion items and things like that on time certain are the most important thing you can do. Now, what I come up here to talk about was your motion item on that crick. I would encourage you to go after Lumen because of their cavalier attitude about getting out there whenever they want to, and they're nonchalant, sort of kind of got to follow a time frame. No, those people are obligated to follow an exact time frame.
Yeah.
And as much notice as they're given on that, there's no excuse from that. When we hear our staff person say, well, other counties are having that problem, that goes to show you that corporation has taken that tack to, hey, we're going to do whatever we want, whenever we want, irregardless of what our requirements by law are and our obligation with the contract, because they have to pay to go through that right away. You know, like the cable companies that they are. You know, I understand that natural gas can run on the right of way without having to pay a charge to go through there. But I mean, those people are there and they got to abide by the rules to go through that. And I would most wholeheartedly encourage you to go after them just to prove a point. Because that's nonsense that they caused this to go on. I mean, that's ridiculous. What happens if the weather would have turned? Oh, them guys could have been up a creek, so to speak. All because that corporation decided they were going to just do whatever they wanted instead of playing by the rules. So I wholeheartedly encourage you to go after that $45,000, even though I realize, you know, insurance companies are great for this, paying out, you know, instead of going to court and fighting things because it's cheaper. There needs to be a point proven every now and then.
Yeah.
And you might well be able to recover attorney's fees too. Thank you very much.
And your point, whenever you talk about any of these fish bearing streams, you know, anytime we're dealing with water in a fish bearing stream, there's a limited period of time you can be in there. So that makes it even more critical. Yes, sir.
Yes, so follow up to the previous speaker is that I had also asked your legal department to check the boilerplate on your overall contracts to make it clear and concise that holdups like that, we will be looking for remedies. Again, reinforcing the follow-up on this and making sure the specifications were clear also.
Agreed.
Okay, next question, or not question, comment. You appointed Bobby Day to the Homeless Housing Task Force. I'm wondering, what is the Homeless Housing Task Force kind of their priority at this time right now? Are they really working on some homelessness, or what's the objective or whatever, and kind of getting a summary?
I don't know what I have a clear answer for you. I think they've been working on updating that whole plan. They have to have a new plan to the state, and that's why we have them coming in on the 21st to point out the changes and the things that they're going to put in that plan. And then it actually is subject to approval from this board here to
Okay.
approve the changes here. But Ron, I don't know, I have a clear answer for you on it right now. I know they'll be bringing it to us. We'll get a chance to see it, but I haven't seen some of the changes looked at this point in time.
Yeah, I can tell you, Ron, I sit on that board, but I'm not a voting member of that board, so I'm just really there as a observer. They are working on coming up with action items to take to help with homelessness in our area and the different facets of homelessness. And so not just, homelessness that we see on the street, but it's maybe a family who the spouse lost his job and that type of stuff. So the plan is, it's a multifaceted look on how to address all the different types of homelessness within the community. And Flo actually sits on that board also, and she is a voting member. But I would say that the scope of what they're doing with this new plan is to try and address homelessness at all different levels and go for the low-hanging fruit that we can actually make an impact on, instead of just spending money, willy-nilly all over the place.
Okay, thank you. So key point then, the homeless task force does give their recommendations like the health board to you, the commissioners.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Because we know there's been significant changes in the, let's call it the homeless world lately with the revisions to the judge's decision and with Camp Hope under potential closing and the people there having 50 little shelters available, empty possibly, and all of that fitting into a context here of our welcoming arms for our community as other communities also try to tighten up on their systems. Okay, very good. And then one other positive comment. I have high appreciation on our county roads, especially at this time of year and as the sun is there, for the fog stripes that you put along the roads. Is that when the sun's in our eyes and when the lights are there, you can't see that center line. I experienced that particularly going over White Pass. They have a 20-mile bypass there because they're doing road construction again. It's a narrow road, big trucks on it, and you can't see the center line. And the state apparently decided to save paint, and we borrowed probably maybe some paint from the city of Longview for white paint for the fog striping so you can see. So I had 20 miles of high appreciation for the fog lines that we have on our roads. So that's positive.
Yeah. I think our public works, we do a good job with the roads out there, and they try to do a good job with them.
The primary reason for the homeless task force is to get money from the Department of Commerce. That's what this is all about. Now, my real question is, we have put, we presented to you guys an overall behavioral path forward for the county. And my question, Steve, you sit on that. How is whatever they are coming up with being built into or in support of the overall county plan that we put forward and you're already working on? So in other words, are they out, whatever they come up with, even though the goal is to get the money from the Department of Commerce, I understand that. But are the action steps that they are coming up with, are they supporting and in conjunction with what we are working on at a higher level?
So first of all, you are correct. That program, that plan that they're coming up with and developing is so that we can receive those funds from the Department of Commerce. And I would say for the most part, yes, it is. They are working to they're looking at addressing the situation differently than it has been addressed in the past. And I feel like they have made progress. There's a lot of things that I think are good in the new plan that is being developed. And I believe we go over that plan again tomorrow, if I remember correctly, Flo. We go over it tomorrow and codify it so that it will be presented to the VOCC. But overall, I would say it's about 60-40. Yes, it is. And then 40%, it's still some of the same old stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, obviously, we all understand the importance of the bigger picture. And hopefully, everything we're doing at that level is going to be supportive of the overall picture.
Yeah, I will say that I don't know what it was, the members that were sitting on it previously, but a lot of the ones that are there now are looking at the homeless situation holistically and really trying to come up with a way to address each individual homeless situation on an individual basis. So I am hopeful about that.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I gotta put my 2 cents in. With what you said, yes, I'm on the homeless task force board. And yes, we are going to address things in a lot of different angles. And again, with that being said, I had brought up earlier, and you guys, I guess, have already talked about selling the juvenile center to facilitate the mentally ill portion of our homeless. And I'm just asking you guys to really really consider it. I know we can farm out our people that are in there now. There's what, 8? And I believe there's, from what I've heard, that there is a mental health group that's interested in purchasing it, perhaps, or maybe you can give us a little insight on that. And I think with that, I mean, they wouldn't have to construct anything. It's there. There's some construction that needs to be done, just repair work. Yes, I agree. The roof needs care on that. But there's many more beds. We need more than 18 beds that Charlie's would, and that would have to have a lot of construction to be serviceable. We need more than 18 beds in our county. That's just not going to take care of the need that we have. The juvenile center would have many more beds. They'd also have beds that could be, because it was a jail, it could be, they could be contained because they are going through possibly issues where, with drugs or whatever. But I'm just trying to maybe get you guys to really think about it. I really think it's a good idea. And we need it really badly. We do have a portion, a considerable portion of our homeless that are mentally ill. We have them in Castle Rock. And we need to have them taken care of. It's going to be cold soon. So I'd like to push for just try to expedite it as fast as you can, because we need those beds. And also, I think if purchasing that in the long run would be a much cheaper budget for the person or the organization that might be interested in this, because it is already done and it's already ready to go practically, except for a few things that would be updated. The easiest way to go. And also, if we take in other counties, we can make money that way. So I think it's a win-win. So I'm really, hoping that you guys consider it. I really do.
Well, just to clarify a couple of things, we have not talked about the juvenile facility as a home for rehab for mentally ill people. We have talked about the organization that is interested in taking that over for us is looking at the hospital. I have not had the opportunity to discuss with them the detention facility, simply because we haven't talked about that yet. So I don't even want to present it as an option to them until we get on the same page with that. So just so you're aware of that, we haven't had that conversation yet. Primarily the organization that we're talking about that is interested in the hospital at the end of Broadway, they did just email me and presented me their plan, if you will, for taking over certain of our mental health aspects that we deal with within the county. That has been presented to us, but we haven't had a conversation about the detention facility yet. So, but it is a good idea, and one that we need to consider and talk about.
Well, thank you for explaining that. Like I say, maybe possibly if you told them that, I mean, as many beds as they would have, they would actually make money by taking other counties' problems as well. So they wouldn't have just our people. They would be regrouping some of their money by bringing other counties' people into the facility as well. Like I said, I can't see where it would be. I think it would be the best bet for them because any other facility they would go to, they would have a construction cost that would be out of sight. And this is already, and there's enough to be able to make some money out of it. So anyways, thank you for considering it. I appreciate it because I really think that with the numbers, we need it. We need to have these people in a safe place for them, for their sake, because winter is going to be coming hard. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll probably just be quiet on it because there's so much that ties to that. You can't do anything without the state giving okay for that type of stuff. And to be real honest with you, the state wants to clear out Western and Eastern. So I don't know that you're actually going to serve your people. There's just a lot of questions. I don't know that you're going to serve our people here. I think who you're going to serve is people that they're going to ship here. There's a real danger of that. So and I'm not trying to throw cold water on it. I agree we need it. I'm just saying the state wants to impose themselves so hard into this that we have to be it.
We don't have a choice. If a third-party organization takes it over, we can't tell them who they can and can't take.
Yeah.
Flo brought up something I think was kind of interesting. There's going to be, we know the plans for Charlie. We know the idea that they want to take over the hospital, but there's a timeline involved in that. And Charlie's is realistically, I'll bet you 2 years away if they were start construction today. And the hospital, I have no idea what the timeline would be there. But maybe we could use that jail facility for a temporary. In other words, they have to build up their staffing and everything else. Well, maybe in the meantime, they're building up their staffing and rent the jail facility space from us while they are in the process of constructing these other things. So just something for you to think about because there is going to be a timeline and it's not going to be quick. And here we've got a facility that could be used on a temporary basis. So.
Hi, I was just wondering if the proposal from the homeless task force, is that going to be available for public review before it comes before you guys?
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know how that works.
Yeah. I don't know if Jean, do you know if Jean is on? She's not on? Let me ask that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
I sit on a legislative steering committee with WASAC, which is the Washington State Association of Counties. And they had we talked, I don't know, it's been maybe 2-3 weeks. We've been talking about Forest Practices Board and them expanding the buffers along the creeks to take some extra stuff. And WASAC is working on that, and they've actually, this really isn't good news for you. They've actually, they set up a meeting with the new director of ecology. I don't remember the first name, but the last name is Sixkiller, is the new director of ecology. And one of the big things we referenced it and others referenced it, was a study out of the University of Washington to basically show that there's really no need for this. Well, he didn't even want to talk about that. He didn't even want to hear about that because he doesn't believe it. So that was a little disconcerting to hear that the director of ecology was not even interested in looking at that study. How did they put it to me? And I'm probably going to get this totally correct, but his the environmental groups that he works with told him that this study is not good, it's flawed, and so he doesn't believe it and doesn't want to use it. So it makes me a little nervous coming, I think the vote comes November 12th, I think, right in that area. So it makes me a little nervous. And you also should know that Department of Ecology is, with these same groups, they're looking to set aside another 77,000 acres. I don't know where they're gonna be for certain types of, they have names for them. It's just, it just keeps coming. So that's just a little update. That was kind of hard to listen to because I looked through that study. A lot of us looked through that study and it looked like they, the sources they use and stuff, it made sense that it should at least be considered. And to hear that the new director of ecology wouldn't even consider it was a little bit disconcerting.
So much for following the science.
Yeah.
For the record, the director's first name is Casey.
Casey?
It's not
Oh.
Sonny. Also, for the record, the director of the Department of Ag used to be a career ecology person. So you could look at another stumbling block there for the process. And I'm not a big fan of the University of Washington, but I'll take their word on the study they did, because I mean, I've looked at it. That's a pretty good piece of work.
I thought
They
so.
got a good forestry school up there. And I mean, man, somebody did a lot of work on that thing, and it's very good work. And it goes to show you just how government works. Like I said, for the people, of the people, we the people. Well, it's really of the people that show up, and it's really the people that sit at the big table. That director of ecology was appointed by the governor, and the governor was elected by the people in the state. I mean, that's okay, we got that. But that's very wrong when they bring their personal agenda to work with them. They need to know what, follow the science, for crying out loud. How many years has that been touted as the thing to do? Find a piece of science you don't like, discard it, that's not a very good public process. And it's really poor public policy what's happening there. But thanks for watching it.
Yeah.
Morning. On previous years in Washington State, when I lived here for 39 years, I worked for Department of Natural Resources in forest application. And I discovered that the RMZ zones were a big imposition on people's board feet of trees. And I worked out a formula for a tax credit that would go against whatever they were going to be falling, and they couldn't fall, and give them a tax credit when they weren't able to utilize that board feet. And I thought maybe perhaps it's an eminent domain situation, and perhaps people could get together and decide that they had a right to be paid for the not use of their property because it was being removed from their ability to make money off of it. So that's one angle that could perhaps be used in the legislature. And I think it affects anyone that has value on their land, whether it's along a river, or when we lived in Montana, we were along a river and they had an RMZ zone, but beavers were chewing down a lot of the cottonwood that would be holding the hillside. And nobody was going out from the Department of Fish and Wildlife to shoot beavers to keep them from eroding, the sides of the rivers. So it's throughout the United States where they're doing this RMZ thing. And I feel that it's not a equitable thing for the citizens of the United States. So it's just one angle I was working with.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
For the record, I'm Bruce Barnes, lifetime resident of the state of Washington, 60 years. I can speak a little bit about forestry. It's really interesting to me if you're a big timber corporation that you can go cut all the timber along all the creeks, streams, take all the riparian zones while you're paying a fine for that timber that's been cut down because the fine that's levied on you is so much less than the value of the trees. But yet the public can't do that because they don't have enough money to fight against state regulations, federal regulations. You know, the fines that are levied against the public are way higher than they are to a private timber corporation, one of them being one that owns like 87% of the private timberlands in this state. The other thing I wanted to talk about is your homeless situation. I live in Vancouver, Washington, Clark County, and I'm a guest here in your community. But I want to tell you, everything that has been done with the homeless has been a failure in that area. Now they're trying to ask for more money. $724 million were spent last year in Portland, Oregon on homelessness. They have no idea where the money went. They gave it $724 million. Let that sink in for a second, right? They've done nothing to stop it, right? The problem is the drugs. They're not stopping any of the drugs. Our state legislation in this state have failed us miserably because they've allowed people to have certain drugs on them and certain amounts of drugs. Our governor that got elected says he was going to do away with this, but now he's going to all these drug programs and saying, we're going to give you clean heroin and clean fentanyl to use so you don't die from the infected fentanyl or heroin. That's not a plan to fix this problem. My brother was a drug addict till he was 40 years old. He's like an infant now. He had 2 massive strokes due to it, lost all his teeth due to it. I've had many family members on my dad's side of the family that were drug and alcoholics. My uncle just killed himself this year over alcoholism and not having enough money to live. He had $30 left to his name after all his bills were paid at the end of the month. It's disturbing to me what is going on. They're putting all these little tiny homes in, but most people don't want to live in those because there's rules, right? They don't want to live by any of the rules. Talk to any of them. Go to the share house. Go to any place they're giving out food in Vancouver or Portland. It is a train wreck. I mean, an absolute train wreck. And my idea was we've got a facility in Clark County that's a large mountain honor camp that now is deserted. They could have incarcerated these people for vagrancy, right? And put them in that camp for 190 days to detox them and get them the mental illness evaluation that they needed, and then partner with businesses in the community to put them back to work. I've seen absolutely none of that because it's a homeless industrial complex to make huge money where nobody knows where it's going. Nobody. I've asked for public disclosure. I still haven't got it over how much money the city of Vancouver and Clark County really has pulled back on their money for homelessness, because all we're doing is drawing more and more and more people into this from other states because they realize, number one, we don't have any laws in this state at all. You know what I mean? We can't persecute any of these people for what they're doing. And this drug program that you've got at your courthouse, it's a hamster wheel of repeat offenders. It doesn't work. Okay, until you punish people for what they're doing and the theft that they're doing and the harm that they're doing to other people, it does not work. So that's what I've got to say about this. And like I said, I'm a guest in your community. I'm actually up here for the sediment retention dam. But I can tell you, I've been to the Forest Practice Board, especially for the chemicals use that they're spraying in the timberlands. They're not going to do anything because these timber companies pay every politician in the state, including the governor, Republican and Democrat. They give them campaign contributions, and both of you know how much it takes to get campaign contributions to get elected. And it's really expensive to run for just even a county council job. We've got a woman right now running for the city council in Vancouver. She spent over $110,000 so far to get elected. 110 grand. She's got her name up on all the billboards, and she's a great person, you know, and she's doing it for all the right reasons. Her mother was murdered. Her father was charged for it. Her father did not do the murder. She proved in civil court that her father didn't do the murder. The man admitted to it. He actually worked with the sheriff's department, and the prosecutor won't prosecute him. So we've got a murderer walking around us in Vancouver that's not murdered just one person, but multiple. So she's done a TV series on it that will be released coming up here in the end of September. But anyways, we've got problems that we've got to figure out, and common sense is really the biggest thing, and it doesn't seem like it's too common anymore. So I thank you for your time.
Yeah. Just to piggyback real quick, and I've stated these stats before, Washington State is number 3 in growth of homelessness. Number 3 in the whole out of the United States. We're actually number 1 in chronic homelessness, which they consider multiple incidents of being homeless or for being homeless for a year or more. We're actually number 1. And we spent as a state $5 billion over the last few years. And it doesn't get any better, just to add to your point. Yeah, Gina. If she's on, maybe we can get an answer to your question, Lorna.
Hey, good morning. Gina
Good morning.
James, Health and Human Services. I heard Lorna's question and I just wanted to offer the plan will be available ahead of the workshop. We're hoping to, when we have our meeting this week with the Homeless Housing Task Force, that they are sort of give their stamp of approval to move it on. And then we're going to post it at that point. So first part of next week, hopefully we'll have it posted on our website. We also have an opportunity on our website. It's available now, and we'll attach the plan here next week for anyone to give feedback. So they can do that through the website if they'd like to, or get a hold of myself. We'll have the workshop with the commissioners I think it's on the 21st, where we'll be reviewing that plan. But we don't need a decision. That's sort of meant to be an introduction for the commissioners and the public to the plan. We will also schedule a formal public hearing, so we'll have that opportunity as well. And there may be an additional opportunity. We've talked about sort of an open house type setting where we'll have maybe a couple of hours that anyone from the public could drop in and give their feedback on the plan as well. So we're looking at a couple different options for the community to give input and feedback to that plan ahead of a decision by the commissioners.
Okay.
Good morning, Gina. Larry. Hey, Gina, during your monthly meeting, don't you allow guests to come in and sit in the back of the room, and you even allow them to comment?
Those meetings are open to the public, so anyone is welcome to come in and listen. And typically, if there is time, if we get through the business for the day, if there's time, then yes, they do typically allow folks to share.
Okay, excellent. And when is the next meeting?
The next meeting is this Thursday at 2 o'clock, Thursday the 25th at 2 o'clock here at Health and Human Services.
Okay, thank you. Very good.
Okay. Huh? Okay, I got who's got the hand up, do you know? Huh? I have a hand up. Let me take that real quick. How come I can't see it? Mimi, you have your hand up?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay, I don't know if you can see me. Thank you. My name is Mimi, and I moved here to Cowlitz County in 2019. We purchased our first home. And since I've moved here, I have experienced a lot of issues with barking dogs, and I know this is kind of a sore subject for you guys, but I've just been informed about these meetings, and I would like to see if we can come together and work something out, propose something, because the current system is not working.
You know, we just updated our nuisance animal ordinance in the county. Are you, do you reside in the county or one of the cities?
In the county. I'm right outside of city limits, so it's county. And when I first moved here, I called and they told me that animal was in control of it. And then it had a whole year where nobody was overseeing it. And then recently, yes, the county did take it over from animal control. And the issue that I have is that they want 3 people from 3 separate addresses to complain. And I've kept logs. I have videos and logs for 5 years on 5 different properties are surrounding me of people that let their dogs out 24/7 to bark nonstop. And they let them go at large. And when I call the sheriff's office outside of the animal control office hours, they never come. So I called last night and I had to call non-emergency this morning to request a call back from animal control because otherwise my calls just get ignored. And I would like right to quiet use and enjoyment of my property. And unfortunately, it's like I don't want to waste your guys' time with the details, but it's excessive. It's 24/7. And it wakes my child up who's trying to go to school and learn. It wakes my partner up who has to go to work. And I feel like there's just no resolve. And I'm just over here like, hey, hello, please stop your dogs from barking, and nobody's listening. So thank you for listening.
Absolutely.
Hello, my name is Deborah, and I'm actually a resident of Vancouver, so a guest here today. I just wanted to speak on public speaking. I appreciate being able to come here and publicly speak. A little bit of history is I went down to my own city council meeting, Vancouver City Council and Clark County, to share some information in regards to a person in our community that had ripped me off. It totally conned me. And as I researched this person for the last 15 months, found out I'm not the only victim. In my case, I got a protection order because domestic violence and financial abuse. But when, when all is said and done, when I went to Vancouver City Council to speak, to make the public aware that this person is out in our community, that the prosecutor is not prosecuting at this time, to speak publicly on it. Down in Vancouver, Mayor Ann allows one time a month for public speaking. The CCTV was shut off, which really disappointed me because I had other victims and other people that wanted to hear my story that are in support of me, and I'm in support of them, but I was the one getting up to speak because it's not easy to get up in front of people and speak. I've never been involved in politics, but I think it's wrong. It's even against the Public Meetings Act to not put out what we're speaking about or what our concerns are in our community. When I spoke that evening, I was speaking to the room and the room only. That's not fair to me. It's not fair to the community. When I then went to Clark County, they presented and you get to speak. Along with all the other counties I shared my story with in my area, and they welcome you. I've been welcomed here. I get to come up and speak. And I just wanted to speak on that today, that I think it's wrong. The city of Vancouver not allowing public speaking at every meeting about anything. You can speak on agenda items and it goes out to the public, but if you come up to speak about a concern in your community, a thought about homelessness or anything of the sort, you're shut down, turned off, and you're speaking to the room. That's not the way it's supposed to be. Thank you.
Well, I can tell you there's 3 people that sit up here that agree with you on that. We have a job that you elected us to do. So we represent you. You're the boss. So if you have something to say, we're going to allow you to say it. Now, there's been times when things get repetitive and go on where and it doesn't happen very often, where I've asked people to kind of wrap up. But other than that, we're here to listen. This is your house. So you're welcome to come and speak. If you want to drive up, you can speak to us every week if you want to. Anything else? Yeah.
I don't want to waste your time, but the other thing I wanted to add is recently we were over for a celebration of life at Goose Lake. My girlfriend and I had been over there at her birthday as well. And I want to urge you to talk to the Forest Service, because over in the Mount Adams Forest Service area, Road 62, 64, Dry Creek Road, Panther Creek, they've all been inhabited by homelessness. And the filth and mess that they have left is unbelievable. Now Mount Adams is giving out poop kits to everybody that goes in the forest. And it's got a target that you've got to hit on the poop kit. You put it in cat litter. And the reason for that is because of the spread of the drugs that are getting into the wildlife in Mount Adams National Forest. Now, these are our cherished lands. So I talked to the U.S. Congresswoman's office 3 times now. She's promised me she's going to meet with me 5 different times and has not met with me. And so I told the Forest Service and the Mount Adams Institute, if you don't clean it up, I'm going to, and I'm going to dump it on the US Congresswoman's front doorstep down by the Marshall House. And I'm going to dump it in front of their Forest Service building, so they'll have to clean it up because they're not doing anything to keep our prized possession, which is our public lands, clean. And I've talked to law enforcement. They've written not one ticket to any of these people for littering, for over camping the 14 days, anything. So I'm just urging you as a county here, man, you got to stand firm on that because we can't allow this in our public lands because it's, again, costing us a fortune just to clean this up. And I'll give you an example. Down by Toyota in Vancouver, they had people living in a marshland, about 130 people living down there. It was the headwaters of Burnt Bridge Creek. I gave the Department of Transportation who owned the property a tort letter, which is an intent to sue them for violations of the Model Toxic Control Act, the Endangered Species for Salmon and Steelhead because it's a fish-bearing stream, the Clean Water Act, amongst other things. You know how much it costs to clean that homeless camp up to the taxpayers? $2.7 million. $2.7 million it took to clean that mess up. And they didn't even clean it completely. They ended up selling the property beforehand to get the people so they couldn't camp there anymore. But they're inhabiting all the wetlands along Interstate 5 and SR 500, which is a watershed to filter out everything for a clean drinking water. And the city of Vancouver uses toilet to tap. I don't know if you're familiar with that. They use the sewer water and they mix it with the drinking water, and you're actually drinking processed water from the sewage treatment plant in your water in the city of Vancouver. And so they cannot filter out any of the drugs, the birth control, any of that, and people are getting sick. So that's another thing you got to be concerned with because the state of Washington Department of Ecology is pushing toilet to tap so they save your clean drinking water, but it's really not saving it. So anyways, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we got a workshop in about 3 minutes. I'm gonna put us in recess for about 3 minutes and take a quick break and we'll be right back. How's that? Okay.
Dave from Colin, and then the email, I don't remember the guy's name. Huh? I think it's from the guy from this. No, that's fine.
Okay, we'll come out of recess. We'll head into this workshop on the Mount St. Helens. Glad to see everybody here. We appreciate your attendance. Glad to see, I haven't seen Ruth in a long time, Senator Braun's office. Representative Perez's office is here. I saw Representative Orcutt and I saw Senator Wilson. If I missed anybody, I apologize. I don't think so. But I think we're starting with some presentations. I can, and I'll probably interject as we get into conversation what we've done as a county over the last 2-3 years, what we've tried to do. But we'll just start with presentations and go from there. And first, who do we have? Colin? Okay. And I think you're going to have him right over there? Okay. Right there. Yeah. And just make sure the bright green light's on so everybody can hear and we're good to go.
Push that, your button needs to be pushed, Colin, on the black right here. That one. There you go.
Now we have good sound.
There you go.
Okay, if I can have the first slide, please, Kelly. So my name's Colin Thorne. I'm from the University of Nottingham, although I'm now resident in Vancouver, Washington. And I'm going to talk to you this morning for about, I hope, 15 minutes, if you'll bear with me, about the potential for using large engineered log structures to improve the efficacy and trap efficiency of the Corps of Engineers sediment retention structure. Next slide, please. So I know we've got a broad audience here, and I will try and avoid technical jargon and that kind of stuff. And also, I won't assume prior knowledge about anything. So the reason that we're all here listening to this talk is because of the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. And if you just one click, what happened here was the world's largest recorded landslide fell off the side of the mountain. 2.5 cubic kilometers of sediment avalanched into the headwaters of the North Fork Toutle River and filled it up to a depth of 200-300 feet. Immediately following that, seconds following that, the release of pressure on the magma chamber allowed a cataclysmic explosion that blasted across the landscape, knocking down trees, and extremely hot, what they call a pyroclastic flow, a superheated dust storm that just erased the life from the area that was affected. And also left a thick layer of pumice and ash over the top of the avalanche deposit. And that sediment there filled in the alluvial river to the point that there was no trace of the North Fork Toutle River, and it had to kind of start again. It wiped the slate clean and jacked up the land surface a couple of 100 feet. Next slide, please. So one more click. So the avalanche went a long way downstream. In this slide, the yellow area is the debris avalanche, the giant landslide, because it kept going down the valley and kept filling it up for several miles downstream. Downstream from that area, there were a series of mud flows called lahars, but mud flows is a good term. Now, the mud flows went all the way down the Cowlitz, down the Toutle Cowlitz system and into the Columbia River. But that's not really, those deposits aren't what we're talking about today. We're really focused on sediment that's washing off of the debris avalanche, the yellow area. And such was the volume of material and the threat to navigation and also to the good people of the lower Cowlitz Valley that the Corps of Engineers in 1985 built the sediment retention structure, which you see flagged in the center there. And notice it's called a sediment retention structure, unlike, say, Mossy Rock Dam, which is a dam. And I'll explain the difference in a moment, because technically it is quite important. And the purpose of the SRS was to hold that sediment back that's washing out of the yellow area, trap it in the pink area, the so-called sediment plain, and therefore prevent it from lowering the level of protection, the LOP, provided by the levees at Castle Rock and Lexington and Kelso and Longview. Now, I wasn't actually here in 1980. I was living in the great state of Mississippi at the time. But my first teaching job a couple of years later was at Colorado State University. Colorado State had very good links with the USGS, and they managed to get me a gig researching at Mount St. Helens. Next slide, please. So here's me in 1983, standing next to the North Fork Toutle River. I haven't changed a bit, really, have I? And I've been studying this thing ever since. It's been a lifelong passion for me to try and understand what's going on naturally, and therefore manage the risks to people and property better. And my thesis is you can't manage what you don't understand. But I'm not a river manager and I'm not an engineer. My interest is in the science of rivers and particularly the dynamics of sediment. And I want to be dead clear about that. Next slide, please. So what is this SRS thing? Well, here's a slide taken from the 1985 design concept report. And it's a kind of a dam, but it's a very leaky dam because it's got holes in it. And these holes or culverts were specifically designed to allow water to pass through the dam so that it didn't impound a reservoir, but to slow the water upstream and encourage the deposition of the sediment. So they very specifically didn't build a dam. They built a sediment retention structure. And during its first phase of operation, when those culverts were letting the water through, they estimated it would trap 88 million cubic yards of sediment, which is quite a lot of sediment, but not a lot of sediment in the context of Mount St. Helens. And the concept, therefore, was that the sediment would fill to the crest elevation of the spillway, and the spillway was there to take really big flood events and to keep the structure safe from being washed out. Next slide. Now, by 1999, that phase one storage was full. It took about 10 years. A lot of people at the time said, well, that didn't work. I mean, the darn thing's full inside 10 years. Now what? That was not the end of the story for the SRS. It was always anticipated that after that dead storage below the spillway filled, the river would start to build grade, because rivers need a gradient in order to get gravity to get the water to flow. Well, prior to the building of the structure, you can see there's a pretty steep grade on that river. And it was estimated by the experts at the time that fairly quickly the river would recover to 25% of its previous grade. That would store an additional 100 million cubic yards, actually more than the dead storage. And beyond that, next slide, please, there was a third phase planned where the river recovers to half of its pre-disturbance slope. So not as steep as it was, only half as steep as it was. That stores another 70 million cubic yards. So next slide, slide, please. So the total design capacity here is 258 million cubic yards, which is a lot of sediment, even in the context of Mount St. Helens. So the SRS was a pretty sophisticated design and should have lasted a long, long time, and indeed has lasted a long, long time. Next slide, please. So here we are in phase one. This was the storage then that was below the spillway crest, and indeed sediment accumulated 8.8 million cubic yards per year, very high trap efficiency. 90% of the sediment coming off the mountain was held back and didn't go down and cause problems in the lower Cowlitz. So very successful. And just in that top right picture, you can see those culverts in operation. There is no flow over the spillway. All the flow is going through that concrete block with holes in it. Next slide, please. But as I say, at this time, this is going to be a graph I'm going to show you, comes straight out of this Corps of Engineers report last year, showing that during that period between 88 and 98, 90% of the sediment was being trapped. Next slide, please. Then we went into phase two storage. That's exactly what everybody expected to happen, and stored another 17.6 million cubic yards over the period 98 to 2006. But the trap efficiency had dropped because this structure was now what we call run of river. There was no ponding effect. The water just goes over the spillway. So the efficiency was down to 2.2 million cubic yards per year, but people were still pretty confident that it would build grade in phase two. Next slide. What happened though between then and 2009 was the sediment trap efficiency kept dropping, and it dropped a lot down. The lowest recorded value was 15%. Now that's going to ring some alarm bells, because the structure needs to trap a bigger proportion of the sediment than that in order to keep people safe in the lower Cowlitz. So in 2009, the Corps of Engineers convened a panel of experts, people from all over the country, including me, to talk about what are we going to do to improve the trap efficiency of the SRS, get it back up where we wanted it. And they came up with two what they felt were pretty surefire ways of working. They looked at, I think, 17 different options, but they picked the two that they thought were the most effective. Next slide. And the first one was to build grade building structures, to give nature a kind of leg up in roughening the sediment plane, slowing the flow, and building grade. And they decided to do that using engineered log structures, which was again, very forward thinking. We do this all the time now, but this is back in 2010. And because there was stimulus money available from the Obama administration, they were able to build them pretty much straight away. So in 2010, they built these 3 structures. Next slide, please. But it's important to note this is a pilot project. This is to see if this technology actually works. It wasn't intended that it would be, it would solve the problem. It was to see if this was a feasible way of solving the problem. 3 structures, a cutoff berm to make sure the river went through the structures, 14 very large engineered log jams, and a kind of egg box riffle weir structure across the river. Again, almost like a little SCS, a permeable dam to take out sediment but not impede flow. Next slide, please. They built these structures about a mile upstream of the SRS, just out of the backwater effect of the dam itself, where again, you'd expect to build some grade. Next slide, please. And here's the layout. At the top is the cross valley structure. They didn't have enough money to build it right across the floodplain, so they built it halfway and then put a false valley wall to just see how a cross valley structure would work. 14 engineered log jams strung out in 2 rows across the sediment plane, and that diversion berm on the left side just to stop the river kinking around and missing the structures and kind of cheating them. Next slide, please. This is what the cross valley structure looked like under construction, this big sort of egg box thing. To be frank, it didn't really work. It was too efficient. They had very serious scour on the downstream side, costing a lot of money to repair it. And the Corps pretty much decided putting things across the river, barriers to the flow, wasn't a great idea. Next slide. And here are the wood structures being put in place. And this slide's particularly notable. And I thank Mark Smith for it. He took it from a helicopter in 2010. The SRS is right up at the top of the picture. The cross valley structures in middle field. The engineered log jams are going in the foreground. You'll notice there's not a stick of vegetation out there. This is a sediment plain. It's like the Gobi Desert out there. Nothing to slow the flow, nothing to impede sediment transport, and a big braided river. Next slide, please. There's the structures, very stout. Next slide. And in this one, if you click one more time, Kelly, you can see there's a large truck there for scale. So these are ELJs as only the Corps would build. They're 120 to 170 feet across, 12 feet high. Next slide, please. Driven piles connected by very, very stout crossboards with whole trees with the root wads on, shackled onto those posts. These are the most robust log jams I have ever seen. Next. And then they dress them with slash to have a kind of sieving effect, so that the fine sediment in suspension would be sieved out by all those twigs and branches and would settle out rather than moving on down towards the Cowlitz River. Next slide, please. Now, it took a little bit longer to do the second pilot project to test whether the idea was sound. But in 2012, sufficient funds were raised to raise the spillway, and the spillway was raised by 7 feet, creating effectively a new round of phase 1 storage, and therefore adding to the sediment trap efficiency. Next slide, please. And it worked. Both of them worked. So you can see that from that low point of 2009, there was an immediate lift when the GBS structures, the grade building structures went in. There was a further lift, a further improvement in efficiency when the SRS came on, SRS spillway rise came online. and efficiency was back up above 60%. Job done. So those two methods were both turned out to be effective. Next slide. Now, by 2017, the spillway rise had been negated by sedimentation. So the sediments back up to the top of the spillway. We then have run-of-river conditions once again. And as you can see, there's not a leaf of vegetation out there to slow anything down. It's just a bed of marbles that the sediment's flying across. So that was kind of it for that sediment rise. Next slide. Yeah, so 2016-17 was when the sediment renewed its relationship with the spillway. Next slide. What happened after that was that the sediment trap efficiency fell off again pretty rapidly, down to about 20%. So that's, again, ringing alarm bells here that it's dropped off so much. And it was 2019 then when a decision was made to raise the spillway again and get a new round of phase 1 storage and improved efficiency on the basis of an SRS crest raise. But what about the GBS structures? What were they doing at this time? Next slide, please. Well, here's a photo mosaic from a drone in 2013. And you can maybe pick out the 14 structures there because each of them has behind it a little island that's developing in its shadow zone. But they're not particularly impressive, and some of the structures are really not working that well at all. The ones that are doing the best actually are those over on the North Valley Wall. That's the right side of this picture, right around where it says 2013, where we're developing a big sand deposit that actually looks a lot like a little floodplain and has got vegetation growing on it and a lot of sand being stored, which is what we're trying to do. Next slide. Oh, and I'll just keep your eye on two structures there. That right-hand one that's doing quite a decent job of building an island there, and one more click. This left-hand one here, which is building an island of sediment, but has very little veg on it. Next slide, please. So this is in 2017. Things do not look as good at all. What's happened here is post the spillway rise, the river was backed up. This didn't have any culverts in it. It was actually acting as a dam. Dams pond water. Water kills off vegetation. And that's exactly what happened during this phase. And if we highlight the two structures again with 2 clicks, you can see that neither of them is doing very well at all because of the drowning effect of the spillway rise. But after 2017, that goes away because we're back to run of river. Next slide, please. And by 2023, things are looking pretty green. And one more click. You can see this structure is really building quite a big floodplain now around it. And the one on the other side has built a very nice delta-shaped island. Next slide. And bring you right up to date. These were taken a couple of weeks ago. And if we circle our structures, once again with 2 clicks, that one's disappeared into the forest, the floodplain forest, and the other one has this really nice developing island, exactly as was intended. So these things are doing just what we hoped they would do, what the Corps hoped they would do. Next slide, please. And just to hammer home the point, here's one of the structures. They all have names after the people who built them. This is Jean in 2013, about 8.5 feet tall, very raw looking. Look at all that bare ground around it. Here's the same shot taken 2 weeks ago. Next slide, please. Just keep your eye on that red notice there. Next slide. You can't even see it anymore now. So this structure will deteriorate. It will be buried through time, but its work is done because it has created that forest now, which is going to trap and contain sediment. So I'll close with a little video loop. I'll just show you where these things are again to get you oriented. So we've got the diversion berm, bottom left, cross valley structure in the middle, and the ELJs strung out between Alrot Island and the northern flank. Next slide, please. And what I'm going to show you is a video loop of satellite images. And these satellite images are not true color. they're a false color, infrared, mixed with some other colors, such that vegetation comes out green and water and sediment comes out gray. And when we hit the button again now, we'll start flicking through time and see how through the months, we've got about 5 or 6 satellite images per year. We'll see how the green during the summer and fall takes over most of the sediment plain. But then in the winter and in the spring with the high flows and the snowmelt, the river just pushes its elbows back out, sweeps that sediment away, destroys it. It's a powerful stream and reclaims its grade plain. But then next summer, the veg comes back. And next fall, it gets knocked back by the flow. And so it goes around this titanic struggle between hydrology and biology. And the pendulum swings back and forth. But as you watch this through time, the vegetation's winning. This sediment plain's huge. The river can't keep it active all the time. And even part of it, maybe 10%. All the rest of it is being claimed by the vegetation and turned into floodplain instead of grade plain. And in doing so, the magical thing there is that coarse material builds a channel, fine material builds a floodplain. That floodplain is being built from sand primarily, which is the sediment we don't want to get into the lower Cowlitz. And so this one's taken in December of 2024, and you can see how much greener that sediment plain is now than it was before. Next slide, please. Just click it one more time there. And the good news is that the decline in the trap efficiency has not only halted, but looks like it's being reversed. The trap efficiency originally in 2023 was calculated at 50%, but there was some doubt about the accuracy of that. It's something like maybe 30% already, and the vegetation hasn't really even got going yet. Next slide, please. And so just a final before and after, 2013 on the left, 2025 on the right, of greening the sediment plain, of roughening it, of building grade. Next slide, please. So what are the findings of this study then, this pilot study, remember, that was started in 2010? Well, number one, next slide. The ELJs are building grade through vegetation and deposition, and phase 2 is underway. And the even better news is that beaver are now colonizing that floodplain, both naturally and also through reintroduction. And the beaver build ponds, which also trap further sediment. And they manage the forest, and we'll do all of that for nothing. We don't have to pay them or anything. Next slide. The 2012 spillway raised and renewed phase 1 storage for 5 years, and then its effectiveness declined. Next slide. Phase 2 storage, that's that long-term 100 million cubic yards, greens and roughens the sediment plain. It's cost-effective and it's sustainable. That sediment is sequestered forever. Next slide. If we added more ELJs, which we'd have to do if you wanted this to be an effective sediment reduction measure in the long term, we'd also promote further anabranching, further meandering, and increase beaver occupancy. Next slide. And that's useful not just for fins and feathers and trees, but because it generates multiple co-benefits for ecotourism and the economy of Cowlitz County. Next slide. The 2012 spillway rise actually increased phase 2 storage by about 20 million cubic yards, which is commendable. I mean, that's a good number. However, next slide. Roughening the sediment plain has the potential to store 170 million cubic yards, which is a lot more. Next slide. So the grade building structures pilot project is complete. We know it did work. It's a success. And my thesis is then, let's build on that success going into the future. Thanks very much.
Couple questions, if I can, if you know them. On these pilot projects, do you know what what was spent, the amount of money?
That's-
Roughly?
The short answer is no. But I gather it was less than $1 million. You would have to ask the Corps what the actual cost was.
Less than $1 million, and it was,
That's the
Kate?
numbers I've heard, but
Okay.
nobody has
And it
told
was,
me officially what the cost
the
was.
approval process was through the Corps and they funded those things?
Correct.
Okay.
Colin, what would the effect, if we didn't have those ELJs, what would have happened to the life expectancy of the SRS if those weren't there, do we know? Because obviously they were, how tall were they above the ground?
10 to 12 feet.
10 to 12 feet, and there was 4 feet showing there, so they retained a lot that didn't get to the SRS. You understand what I'm saying? A lot of that sediment was
Yeah,
held back
yeah,
by
yeah,
those.
yeah.
So what would have happened to the SRS had those not have been there, do we know?
Well, what was happening to the SRS after 1998 was that it wasn't building grade particularly quickly, certainly not fast enough for it to fulfill its mission. If the spillway hadn't been raised, I think the trap efficiency would have dropped to about 15 or 20% and stayed there. Now, raising the spillway increased that trap efficiency to 60% for 5 years, but then that's it. Then you either need another spillway crest or you have to get cracking on building grade. And the way you build grade is by roughening the floodplain. And the cheapest way of doing that is with large wood structures.
And the Corps is currently looking at increasing the SRS another 10%, correct?
10 feet.
10 feet, I'm sorry.
So it's
another
10
feet.
A 10-foot rise.
And how much is that going to cost us?
Again, I don't know. Perhaps somebody in the audience does.
I just saw something that said 56 million is what the expected cost of the Corps is.
He gave me a number when I was back there and they said they had the money, but I wish I could give you the correct number. I'm not sure. It's a lot.
It is 56 million that they were allocated.
Yeah, that's what I read. So if that $56 million, and I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, but if the way that the SRS was built previously, after 5 years it filled up, are we looking at the same thing, $56 million for 5 years?
I've been studying rivers long enough to know not to make predictions. They're willful entities, and any prediction you make, I guarantee you'll be wrong. Having said that, back of an envelope, I would think a 10-foot rise would last longer than a 7-foot rise, and it might go 10 years. Also, the amount of sediment coming off the mountain is lower than it used to be, and that helps too. But no, I couldn't put a figure on how long that spillway rise would be effective.
Do you know, is the Corps considering implementing the ELJ program, or are they just looking at, we're going to raise it 10 feet, the SRS?
As I understand it, the Corps' phased sediment plan, which was had a limited update in 2017, calls for spillway rises to be the first choice, but only 2 more rises are possible because of seismic concerns. So this will be one of only 2 further spillway rises that can take place ever. And the first choice is to raise the spillway. The second choice is to build grade with the ELJs. So I think the Corps will build ELJs, but they'll probably wait until after they've done 2 spillway rises. That's my understanding of how the phased sediment management plan works.
Why can there only be 2 more raises?
That I understand from Jeremy Britton with the Corps of Engineers, who did the seismic studies on the SRS to make sure it's safe in an earthquake. So the SRS is like a wall and it's got sediment built up against it. And every time you raise a spillway, you put more and more sediment pressing against that wall. During an earthquake, all that sediment would liquefy and would just push on the wall. And so you can't go higher than 2 spillway rises. Otherwise, there would be a risk during a big earthquake of the dam failing. And clearly that's unacceptable.
So there's, as far as, because of seismic, possible seismic activity, we can only raise it 2 more times ever.
That is my understanding.
And do we know what the plan is if those 2 don't solve the problem and it continues to build up?
No.
No, we don't know, or no, there isn't a plan.
No, we don't know. It's often thought, again incorrectly, that the Corps has a license authority to manage sediment until 2035, and that's not correct. They have an obligation to manage sediment in perpetuity. However, the current congressional authority ran from 1985, when they did the studies to build the SRS, to 2035. But that doesn't mean that they can't go on managing sediment. It just means that that round of authorities ends and there would be a new one. And I think my understanding, again, is the Corps will start looking beyond 2035, a bit closer to the time. But at the moment, they're very confident that 2 spillway rises would get them to 2035. But again, I can't speak for the Corps. This is what I've taken from what I've read.
Yeah, I've heard that 2035 date too, but when you look through the agreement, it has no end date.
No,
on
it has no end date.
Yeah.
Correct.
There's questions.
Yeah, yeah.
The seismic.
You're gonna need to do it in a microphone because everything's recorded.
Sorry. Mark Smith, Eco Park Resort. You mentioned seismic concerns from the raises at the spillway. What would the seismic or earthquake concerns be to more ELJs in the river? Would they have the same seismic concern?
No, using more ELJs wouldn't affect the seismic risk because it's done more than a mile upstream of the dam. And it's not piling more sediment against the dam. It's raising the gradient of the river. Bear in mind that the gradient of the river is down around 1%. So obviously that's a massive exaggeration. It's actually a very, very small increase in the angle of the riverbed, but it goes for many miles upstream. And so when you calculate the volume stored, it's much bigger than you can get in the pool just just upstream of the SRS.
Very good presentation. Even I understood it. So good. The primary goal of all of this is to keep sediment out of the Cowlitz and the Columbia.
Correct.
Is that basically what we're trying to do? Okay, I understand the problem with the dam sediment, whatever you call it, tipping over once it gets so high. Okay, that's understandable. This to me looks like a volume problem. You've got so much stuff way up at Mount St. Helens that can still come down. And you've said that these barriers have been very successful. So aside from the spillway problem, is this just a matter of every now and then building more of these traps and gradually allowing it just to keep building?
Yes and no. So the yes bit is yes. Roughening the floodplain is the key. When you put barriers across the river, you trap sediment upstream, but you tend to cause scour downstream, and the structure becomes unstable and falls down. And like I say, they tried that with the Cross Valley structure, and Chris Nygaard, who designed it, said we're never going to do that again. But what you can do is slow the flow without stopping it, without ponding it. And that's what the island building structures do. And the reason I say no slightly is because the amount of sediment coming off the debris avalanche is not fixed. You can reduce that too. And the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife has very successfully done that for over a decade, again, using large wood structures, not to trap sediment that's already been eroded, but to prevent sediment that's in situ from being eroded in the first place.
Oh, okay.
And the calculation shown to me by Pad Smith, the engineer from WDFW shows that they have actually saved 60 million cubic yards of sediment from going in the river over 15 years with their structures. And even as we sit here today, they're building more of those. Now, if we wanted to keep more sediment in the hills, you could do it on WDFW land if the finance was available. If you want to keep more sediment in the monument, that's a problem because they wouldn't let you interfere in natural processes within the monument itself. But there is a potential to save a lot of sediment from going into the river in the first place.
Where does Coldwater Lake fit into all of this?
Coldwater is within the Volcanic National Monument.
Okay, and is there a problem? If I understand, they've got that lake drains through a tunnel that they drilled through rock. Is that whole thing, or maybe I'm talking about Spirit Lake, I guess the old Spirit Lake. Is everything stable up there as far as all that water, or is that part of the problem?
I think the stability of Spirit Lake and Castle Lake and Coldwater Lake is a separate issue from what I've talked about today. I'd be happy to talk about it, but I think that's a different talk.
That's kind of the elephant in the room too. Thank you. Very good presentation.
Good morning. For the record, I'm State Senator Jeff Wilson, representing the 19th Legislative District. Great presentation. Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to get clarity very quickly on the agenda today from the commission. Is it, will there be any discussions or am I allowed in any way to talk about the river aspect, which is now naturally downstream from the retention system? So I'm talking about the Toutle and the Cowlitz River. Is that something that I'm allowed to do, understanding that the gentleman here may be well out of his expertise?
It would be my intention, because I think that's where the big problem is downstream. I understand all the stuff going on upstream, and it's really, to me, it's two different issues. You're working on that upstream, and I get what they're doing up there, but we still have the issues downstream, and the issues downstream are different with the erosion and migration and the stuff you're seeing. So that's really, if you're asking me for my focus, that's really where I'm at, because that's where the problem is.
We have a presentation on that coming up after Colin's done.
Okay, so it is on the agenda. I don't have to preserve the record and worry about, are we going to get to our backyard and fish enhancement and things like that?
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Good report.
I do have a question in that basically you were saying that the state or the government is not allowing any change of vegetation upstream toward the mountain. Is that what you're saying? That's why you can't go farther toward the mountain from the sediment down to establish vegetation?
No, I've obviously not been clear. I'll clarify that point. The colonization of the sediment plain and indeed the entire upper North Fork Toutle River by vegetation is a natural process. And the government, any government, is not doing anything to impede that.
Well, I appreciate that part. However, if we see a problem, and we do not want all that silt coming down that river. So I would think as a layman, I mean, I agree. I do not know what all the stuff that you do. Why are we not going up closer to the mountain, planting vegetation as close as we can, as thick as we can, all the way down there, because that is what's going to impede all of the sand coming down the river. Why are we not doing that?
Well, I mean, these are land management issues. And again, I'm not an expert in land management, but with regard to the river itself, it's a very powerful stream. And in that titanic struggle every year between vegetation trying to colonize the river valley and the river sweeping that vegetation away, many years the river wins. It's a powerful stream.
I do agree on that
Yeah.
point. However, everywhere that we've seen like fire that have gone through and stripped the land bare, and they've put vegetation that has impeded that stream. It might have, I agree, it is powerful, but I don't think I think the vegetation over time, if enough of it planted up north, would be a stronger barrier than what we're giving thought to, because right now I've gone up there. I ride horses toward the mountains. I've just like everybody else, tourist up there. There's very sparse vegetation. And I think that we need to supplement that. I mean, that would be, I think, a tremendous way to stop the flow, because it would disperse it more. I mean, are we not planting up there for a reason, or have we done it? Have we already?
Can I interrupt a little bit? Because we really need to move to other things. You're asking questions of a person that doesn't have the answers for you.
I see.
I got a note from Valerie Ringgold from Army Corps, and she just reminded us, Mr. Thorne does not speak on behalf of U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and should not be answering questions on our authorities and funding. So we're asking him questions he really doesn't have
I'm
answers
sorry.
for.
I did not mean to do that. It's just.
If there's an opportunity for U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to present the long-term plan approved by Congress and answer questions, she gave us a contact, and we will make that contact and try and get them in here. But we're kind of putting this gentleman on the spot here a
I'm
little
sorry.
bit.
I didn't mean to do that.
Okay.
I think I did say quite plainly at the beginning that I'm not an engineer and I don't represent the Corps of Engineers in any shape or form. I'm a river scientist.
Thank you. Good presentation. One of your key metrics is the sediment retention percentage. So how do you get, just quickly, how do you get at that? That's a metric that is very important in all of your presentation.
Yeah, and that's something I do know something about and can speak on. They use, to get the sediment yield from the mountain, an approach called LIDAR, which measures the terrain of the ground very, very accurately. And so you do that in 2022, you do it again in 2023, you difference those two LIDARs and you can see how much material has been evacuated from the avalanche. Downstream, they have sediment gauging stations where they measure the amount of sediment moving down the river, downstream of the SRS. When you difference those two, you can get a good estimate of the trap efficiency. Also, you can do the same method on the SRS sediment plane itself and get another measure of how much it's come up as opposed to how much the avalanche has gone down. So it's using two different methods, one measuring the fluxes of sediment and one measuring the terrain of the ground. And when the two come together, you get a pretty accurate indication of the sediment trap efficiency.
Okay, very good. So that's very important for your present state, and also very important for tracking all the future years ahead.
Yes, and it's absolutely, it's the foundation for the Corps' very sophisticated phase sediment management plan, which has kept people safe since 1985 and continues to do so. So the Corps have got this. I mean, they are supplying the safety that people need. Right. And I wouldn't criticize them at all for doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead. We'll take one more question, and we really need to get to the other presentation. And if you have questions, we can certainly come back, but I want the other presenter to have some time too.
Thank you. For the record, Bruce Barnes. There's probably 3 people in this room that have spent more time on Mount St. Helens besides Colin here in the last 14 years. My friend Paul back here, obviously Mark Smith and myself. A lot of shed hunting, a lot of elk hunting, a lot of just exploring. Colin used to weigh about 300 pounds, but after his 5,000th trip up the mountain, he's lost a lot of weight. But I want to commend him on his presentation and his team of people that have come over and done a lot of studies. But my biggest concern is the federal government can do whatever they want. They keep saying that Mount St. Helens is this natural area process, but there's nothing natural about it. We put an artificial tunnel from Spirit Lake. We put all those monuments up there. We reseeded and replanted and took all the timber that got blown down by the mountain. So it's just a big crock of shit, in my opinion, pardon my language, that they can't do anything because they can. They can do whatever they want. They just choose not to. My second thing is I've been on that mountain in that river valley lots and lots of times before and after the structures were put in. And my suggestion was catcher's mitts, right? Because catcher's mitts catch things, right? Not a wood structure that goes like this and has a bunch of stuff where everything can flow through it. Catch that sediment upstream before it ever gets down. You know what I mean? I've seen the depth go up and up and up on those posts that were put in the ground. And yeah, there's a massive amount of vegetation. But my biggest concern is the fish and wildlife. This is the first year I've ever seen salmon jumping over that sediment retention dam. And the elk herd is already diminished, and I'm really concerned about what's going to happen if that thing turns into a lake. How are they going to get from one side to the other in the winter for the wintering habitat? Also, you know, you've got beavers, otters, bald eagles. I mean, there's a multitude, geese, everything that's on that mud flow. And I'd like to know what studies the Fish and Wildlife have done on the effect of what is going to happen. And my bigger concern is they're logging up there at an alarming rate. And when you log and you take a watershed away, and all those trees are storing water, and I'm all for logging because it creates habitat for the wildlife that I like to hunt, right? And it creates jobs in your local community as long as they're not exporting the timber to another country and making a mountain of profit without employing people in your community. Because there's three things in this community that there's in common, right? It's unemployment, drugs, and crime. And the way to get rid of all that stuff is to create jobs, right? And jobs are when people invest in their community. But back to the sediment retention, when you don't have a watershed, the flow of water increases. And I've seen the increase in the flow of that water. Last year, we got a bridge built on Mark Smith's property for fish enhancement, about $300,000. It took a year to do it. It was instant. These folks put a collaboration group together of all these different groups of people to try and improve the area. And to me, it's just a big null and void thing that they've put all this effort and all this work into something. And the Army Corps of Engineers can just go, hey, you can't talk about it. You can't do it. We want our $56 or $59 million. We're going to do this regardless of the impact. And to me, it's just ridiculous. It's not, there's no good public input and there's no common sense, again, like I said before, in this situation. And to me, stacking those catcher's mitts upstream to catch that sediment, growing more vegetation up above, which is going to enhance wildlife, obviously. It's going to store that sediment coming down, to me, is a way better idea, and it's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper. Thank you for your time.
It actually brings up a point that I had a question of if there's somebody in the room from Fish and Game that can answer the question. If that retention structure is put in, what happens to the upstream and what happens to the salmon that are trying to get up? What happens to the water temperatures? How deep is the water? Are they able to get through that? And if not, what are we going to do? Is there a plan for that? If anybody in the room can speak to that.
If Fish and Wildlife doesn't, I can as a citizen resident for 45 years.
There's somebody coming.
That should inspire.
Thanks, Colin.
Hi, my name is Dave Howe. I'm with Department of Fish and Wildlife. To answer your question, it's complex, as you can imagine. The impacts that Colin has articulated today, the changes in vegetation, the impacts on fish and wildlife are complex. Our agency is on and has been on record for many years, sharing our concerns about how backed up sediment and water does have an impact on fish and wildlife in that sediment plain. As a landowner back there, we definitely have worked for many years with the Corps to make sure that those concerns are being addressed. And there still are impacts. So we don't disagree. There will be impacts with that. I think from our standpoint, we're really trying to invest our time in the Toutle Spirit Lake Collaborative, where we have a whole host of agencies and stakeholders and tribes that are brought together to deal with these complex challenges. Because I think from our standpoint, no one entity can make decisions here. We all have to make them together here. And that's the power of this Toodle Spirit Lake Collaborative, as we've all been coming together for a few years to try to address this complexity and forge a path forward where we have partnership rather than divisiveness. Because I think Congress back in 2015 recognized that no one agency can dictate the outcomes here. We all have to work together, and we can forge a partnership better working together. And I think that's the power of the collaborative. There's been a recent transition here, and the COG is facilitating that here. And so looking forward to continuing to participate in that. But that's really the forum where I think we can address a lot of these complexities and do that together in partnership. And the Corps of Engineers is there. We can ask a lot of great questions of them. So that's where we try to invest a lot of our time right now.
So I agree with you that this is going to take more than one agency, but the collaborative has been at this for quite some time. And to me, it seems obvious that the agency that's going to make the decision is Congress, regardless of what anybody in this room says. And that's one of the reasons that we wanted to bring people together so that we could speak out in one voice and advocate for the citizens of Cowlitz County, because at this point, it's been 40 years and Congress is not listening to anything that anybody in this room is saying. Okay, so I agree with you, and I want us to work and move in that direction. But to this point, what has been proven is Congress is going to do what Congress is going to do, regardless of what is said by the people in this room. I want us all working together, which is why we're all in here. But we have to speak out in one voice and say something's got to change, because at this point, I think scientifically we can show and prove that those structures work, and the Corps is going to do what Congress tells them to do, and they're going to spend $56 million to raise it, and we can only raise it one more time, right? What I'm concerned with is if there's somebody from a salmon agency in the room to speak to the fact that we're dealing with the Department of Ecology right now is looking at implementing buffer zones on riparian streams because of water temperature. And I can assure you that what we're going to do is not going to cool the water temperature up above that structure. It's going to get, the water's going to be hotter because it's going to be shallower. There is no vegetation just to cool the water off. So when we talk about different agencies coming together to deal with this, I want to know who's speaking about that. Who's talking about what's going to happen to the salmon and to the elk and to the lack of vegetation that's going to take place? And is that even being taken into consideration with regards to implementing those structures? Or are we just going to raise the spillway, the 10 feet? You see what I mean? That's what I want. And all of that affects what the next presentation is going to be about. And that is, we're catching all of that downstream in our rivers and in our diking systems. And those things are sloughing off and they're failing because they weren't designed. I mean, if you put a set of waders on, you could walk from the mouth of the Cowlitz to Castle Rock. There's that much sediment in that river. And we're having to deal with that. Congress isn't, DC isn't dealing with it. And we've had, and I'm not pointing a finger at you. I agree with you. We need to work together. And that's what hopefully the purpose of this is to bring us together so that we can advocate for ourselves. Because at this point, I would say that the people who have been advocating for us haven't done a very good job of it, because nothing is being done. We can't do what we need to do to take care of our dikes and our rivers that are impacting our cities, our municipalities, and our citizens. And hopefully the people in this room and the organizations that are represented can come together to represent the citizens of Cowlitz County, and we can say, and if that means we write a letter to the president or whatever we have to do, all of us together to say something's got to change. For 40 years, we're still using data that's 40 years old to implement what we're talking about doing. That's completely crazy to me. So if it's not working, we need to do something to change it. And hopefully we can come together as a community from this point forward and say something does need to give. And why should we wait 5 years to change the guidelines that have been in place for 40 years? Let's change them now so we can start to get the results that we need and not spend unnecessary money.
Yeah. Well, if we're going to tread that territory, then I'll opine in here. I appreciate the collaborative and they get together, but a couple of years ago, it became pretty obvious to me that this was really a political issue. It's whatever anybody comes together with in the collaborative, Fish and Wildlife, Forest Service, Ecology, Army Corps, whatever comes to there, everything has to flow through, and it has to flow through what authorities Army Corps is given to do up there. They have overriding authority on everything. And so it's very clear that this is a political issue. And that's the tack that commissioners have taken the last 2 years is our lobbyists. Now that's our top priority is trying to look at the WRDA and how we expand that to help us deal with some of the downstream issues. We're seeing erosion. We're seeing river migration. Goodness, we're seeing an old landfill that when you get to high enough river that people are picking up garbage from the 60s. We're seeing, we got a conservation group that does outstanding work trying to shore up some of these shorelines to keep some of that from happening. But to really, and to speak to my seatmates deal, and to answer Senator Wilson a little bit, what I'd like to see out of this is, hey, this is the plan. So when I go back and I sit down with Glusenkamp Perez or Murray or Cantwell, or last 2 years, Steve Kopecki with the Army Corps, that this is the plan we think we should implement. And it should be, that's what I would like to see from this group is, hey, this is what we think will work. And we're talking about downriver. You can have, this is what we think you need upriver. This is what we need downriver. And so we're all to my seatmate's point, we're all on the same page. We're all saying the same thing. So if I'm back there, I'm saying it. If the port's back there, and I know the port goes back there quite often, they're saying it. If Bill's back there, he's saying it. If I walk into Marie's office, she's saying, well, how's this plan going? You know, and I think that's what we're really, if you're asking me, that's what we're driving for. To me, it's a political thing. I think all this stuff we're doing is I think it helps, but to get it fixed, it takes a move at Congress. Who's next? Sorry.
Castle Rock.
Dave?
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of hearing Dave, Senator Wilson put together a group over at Longview Port. I'm assuming it'll be kind of similar. That was good information.
Yes, sir. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity. So some of you have heard part of this presentation. I'm going to move through it quickly today, and I think it's going to resound with a lot of you. From what I've heard already, you're already thinking in that same mindset. So when we talk about the Cowlitz River and the Toutle River, of course, we have, that's our backyards, as Senator Wilson has said. And on the Cowlitz River, the Corps uses the term the LOP, which is a level of protection. And those are levels that are defined by the Corps of Engineers about what was originally approved by Congress of years of protection. So a 1 and a 100 year is a 1% flood. Castle Rock has 118-year level protections, and the other cities, as we'll see, have others. But we're going to talk about this as in 45 years later. Next slide, please. So this part of this slide is a slideshow that came from the Army Corps of Engineers with their last survey they put out, which was in early 2025, and it spoke to the survey through 2024. Next slide, please. So this is just a kind of quick synopsis of how things happen. Of course, you can see in the orange triangle where the mountain is, that's where the sediment is coming down. That's where the area that Dr. Thorne is talking about, where the sediment is accumulating and is coming down. And of course, I want to say that I appreciate his presentation and what they are trying to do up there with those log jams. I think that is a critical piece of the puzzle here. And so, but as you can see, as it gets down further, there's the big blue areas are the sediment collection areas, or the sediment areas that the sediment's being collected in behind the SRS. Then you have the SRS. And then as you go down the Toutle and the Cowlitz, you see that's also being a sump where the sediment is settling out in. And then finally to the Columbia River. Next slide. So this slide, you'll see that
this talks about the level of protections, and the top is Castle Rock. You see it has a one in 118 years. Lexington is 167, Kelso 143, and 1 in 167 for Longview. And all those little red slots across the river, as you see, those are areas that the Corps does every year that track what's happening in the river, what the sediment is doing. And so they're very thorough on what they're collecting. And those are important because those are mandated by Congress to be maintained. Next slide, please. So the two that I'm going to point out here is the blue line. If you see the blue dotted line, that's the 118-year level of protection that's supposed to be guaranteed. The blue solid line is what's been happening with the level of protection for Castle Rock. And you'll see the last 5 years, it has dropped dangerously close to the level of protection. It's probably around 125 years. And that was a year ago. And likewise at Lexington, it has for the last 4 years been dropping as well. And of course, this relates to the amount of sediment that's in the basin. Next slide, please. So this is taken from December 6th. This is what they called one of those atmospheric rivers. I don't know why we come up with so many terms for rain. But anyway, it was on December 6th. And you see on the slide on the left, this was the amount of cubic feet of water moving and also the amount of sediment moving as it came across the SRS. And you can see the spike. And then the one on the far side there, the Toutle River at Tower Road, you see that is what it spiked to by the time it got to Tower. So why is that? That's because all the erosion that's happening between the SRS and Tower is going on. So you can see how that it accumulates and what's going on. Next slide. This is the upper photo is taken in 23 and 24 year. I don't know if you can read that, but basically what it says is there's just less than 500,000 cubic yards that was retained above the SRS because of the SRS. 490-some thousand cubic yards. And on the bottom slide, it just shows that there, since 2012, that raise, it has held back 14.9 million cubic yards of sediment. The problem is, and the dark red you see on the bottom is where all the erosion is happening. So as Dr. Thorne has pointed out, that's where you're getting a lot of the silt that's coming off and trying to control it. And then it flows out to the SRS. Next slide, please. So this is the SRS performance. The SRS is down to only being 16% efficiency. And that has dropped from 42% from the year before to 16. And that's been over a year ago now. So they're out there and they're supposedly surveying the river again now, but it's down to 16%. So what that means is that there's actually more sediment that's flowing over the SRS than the sediment that the SRS is trapping. The efficiency is down to 16%, and we see the efficiency dropping. Next slide, please. So these again are the cross sections that the Corps does, and the dark red areas are the certified levees. So again, this is the only area that the Corps monitors is the areas behind the certified levees. That's not the whole river. You see the dark red, those are the certified levees in Castle Rock and in Lexington and down to Kelso and Longview. Everything else is open game. I'm not saying they don't care, but that's not what their authorization speaks to. Water could flood those areas and they would do nothing about it because it's not behind the certified levee, okay? So what I want to point out is right above Castle Rock, you'll see in the green that there's a sandbar, and there's many sandbars, but we're going to show you a little more about this particular sandbar that's up above Castle Rock. But you also see right at Lexington, it says River Mile 7, it's a pinch point at Rocky Point. And if you go out Rocky Point right now, like one individual said, you could walk across there probably with just your shoes, not even needing hip waders. And then you also, what happens at about Rocky Point is that the material changes from a heavy stone gravel material to sand. So all the heavier stuff is settling out when it hits the slower moving Cowlitz coming out of the Toutle. And that's why you have the heavier rock stuff and the stuff that's not moving up in the north end by Castle Rock and down by the mouth of, it's a more of a sand base. And it moves a little more easier. But this, again, 4 years in a row, the level of protection has been dropping at both Castle Rock and in Lexington. In 2009, Castle Rock dropped below the LOP, and in 2019, Lexington dropped below their LOP. Okay, next slide, please. So this is that sandbar that's above Castle Rock. And this is, of course, when the core dredge, the most cost-effective place for them to put the dredge spoils was the areas right next to the river. Okay, it was cost-effective, but it maybe not have been the best move. You can see on the far picture where that the material changes. Well, that upper layer you see was all dredge spoils. But what happened is that the river on the top diagram, you'll see that sandbar in the middle of the river, it's forcing the energy of the river to go on both banks. And so it's eating away a bank, and that is private property. It's eating private property away on that downstream side. And this island is growing. At this point in time, this sandbar was estimated to be 135,000 cubic yards. Darren Halp with the Soil Conservation District now estimates this thing to be closer to 190 1 year later. Next slide, please. And this is typical of all the sandbars you see in the river, and we're going to get into that a little bit more. But what I want to point out here is that the black line is what currently the sediment in the Cowlitz River. And you have, you see Castle Rock, Lexington, and Kelso. You say, well, Castle Rock didn't get much sediment. Again, this is the heavier stuff. And that little bump is relative to what's going on. And then you see, again, the lighter stuff is going out. And of course, the core will dredge the Columbia. And they will sometimes come into the mouth of the Cowlitz and dredge part of the Cowlitz. But nothing has been dredged up here since the late 80s or the mid 80s up in the Castle Rock, the north end area. Next slide, please. So to give this an illustration, the dark blue line represent what the pre-eruption Cowlitz riverbed looked like. And then the black line is showing you what it is at last year's survey. So if you look at Castle Rock and you see that little blip, that's about a 5 foot that's accumulated in there. Well, that little 5 foot is causing some pretty dramatic effects for us. It has covered up our wastewater treatment sewer diffuser outfall, which the Department of Ecology is well noted. And then going down to Kelso and Longview, if you look about River Mile 5 on the bottom of the scale there, they have, if you wonder why Kelso's having to drill wells for the water, it's because they have 10 feet of silt sitting over their rainy system that pulls the water from the Southern River. Now, I'll take you back about 15 years when Longview was having problems trying to pull water out of the Cowlitz River because of all the silt and how many millions of dollars they have spent by going to the wells that they've gone to. And without, there's a little bit of complaints about that. But the millions and millions of dollars, and now Kelso is going through something similar. To what extent, we don't know yet. So there's infrastructure in the river that is affecting people's lives, affecting the cost of things as we go forward. Next slide, please. So I go back to this slide and make your attention to the graph below. So this is a slide from the Corps of Engineers, and it says that above coming into the SRF, there was 2.8 million cubic yards in the 1 year coming in. The SRS only held back less than 500,000 cubic yards. And then what you see below that is where you see the Grin River input and the bank erosions from the Toutle River and the South Toutle River input. All those combined now the amount that's coming into the Cowlitz is 4.5 million cubic yards. And of that, in the basin, in the Cowlitz River Basin, 600,000 of it settled out in the basin. The other 3.9 is getting into Columbia, affecting the ports, affecting that highway, affecting everything that we enjoy about the river as well. Next slide, please. So I take you back up to Castle Rock here, and this is at our wastewater treatment plant. And again, it just shows that the blip there on the graph shows that there is about a 5 or 6 foot of silt sitting over where our wastewater diffuser. How much will that cost Castle Rock? That doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter if we went out and dug it out today, it would fill right back in. Until something happens with the river, until that river gets dredged to some degree. And I know there's people in this room that don't like that D word, but I'm telling you, we're in a place now because the spillway has been postponed, and we can't stop that silt fast enough. We now have sandbars in that river that are growing vegetation, and they've been there and they're growing, and they're not going to go away, no matter what type of flushing you have from the upstream. Next slide, please. So this is just downstream of the fairgrounds. You see the big sandbar there. Well, it's now that sandbar now that the river, because the river's being forced into the bank, is now eating away at our riverfront trail, at the Mount St. Helens Motorcycle Park property, and at the Castle Rock Fairgrounds property. If we get into the high water, we're going to lose part of that property. Next slide, please. So this is back up to that sandbar. This is where Darren Howe from the Soil Conservation District has done extensive work this last year. I think the price he said it was like $300,000, and they put a series of pilings in the river to defect the flow and force that river flow out into the river again. And it's effective, but he will admit to you that this is a Band-Aid, because what the intent is that they've also done a series of plantings where you're trying to plant in dredge spoils and in sand. And they tried to get back down to the base to plant stuff, but you got to remember the dredge spoils are inert of any organic material. It doesn't grow anything fast unless you add something to it. It takes a lot to get something to grow in the dredge spoils. So he has done extensive work, but what I want to show you is that those properties used to go almost out to where that sandbar starts. They've lost up to 150 feet of their backyard. And this is a Band-Aid to stop that. And you could reproduce this going on down, and that's what we may have to do in certain places. Next slide, please. So going back up to what Commissioner Dahl spoke about, this is up near the mouth of the Toutle across on the Cowlitz. So there was a landfill dump up there back in the 50s and 60s. And it was a long, long way from the river at that point in time. Well, guess what? Now, like he said, some neighbors are complaining that every now and then they see stuff coming out of that bank from that old landfill. So now we have potentially even another hazard situation that's building. Next slide, please. This is another site that Darren was working on. This is down in Horseshoe Bend. You can see how close it's coming to the railroad tracks and I-5. Now, you know the railroads are not going to let anything take out that track. So that's not really in theory, but you can see from where the yellow line is to where the red line is, that's where the river used to be in the yellow line and now where the red line is. So what is it eating away? It's eating away private properties. Next slide, please. Again, so how can we address this issue? We know where the flow, we know where it's settling out, we know what's going on. What can we do? Next slide, please. So here's short term. And I know not everybody's in favor of raising the SRS, but I'm telling you, because of the situation that we're in, we don't have a whole lot of choice. We've got to raise our S so that we can have 10 years to do some of the other stuff. And we need to dredge. Those are both short term. They're not permanent solutions. We've got to be able to do that so that we can have the opportunity to install maybe more of the log jams up above, so that we can do the things downstream, like the medium term, which is the constructing the riverbank stabilization. You saw how much cubic yards are coming off the banks themselves. Again, you can't grow something really easy in that. Now there are a lot of different methods that are being proposed, but we've got to flush those out and find out which ones will work, and then be able to put those in. If you talk about a plan, Commissioner Dahl, this is part of the plan. We got to come up with solutions on how to stabilize the banks too, because that's where we're getting it from the SRS down to the Cowlitz River. And then long term, as Dr. Thorne has pointed out, we need to capture that sediment up there as much as we can. But I think there is a real probability that we're going to have to look at removing it above that dam somehow, some way. Again, that's because we need to let the rivers heal themselves. And the log structures are part of that answer. But is it going to hold back 2 million cubic yards every year? I don't know. And I am way less educated than most people in this room. I've lived here ever since this mountain blew, and as many of you have lived here. And we've got to do something different, because doing the same thing and expecting different results, well, you know the end of that story. So we need to capture that sediment. And there's Mark Smith pointed out to me one time that there's an N1 site. And I'm not sure what all that means, but it looks like the narrow point up there, that maybe something can be there that is not necessarily a dam, but something that can be helped to hold a lot of that material even further up in the sediment plain. I'll lead others to discuss that because I don't know that much about it. But those are the steps that we need to succeed. Now, next slide, please. So this is the issue that we come down to, the cooperation, authorization, and appropriation. So first of all, cooperation. Now, I will agree with Mr. House. I'll echo that the collaborative has been very useful, bringing all the agencies in the room. This is a complex issue. If it had been simple, we would have cured it. We would have solved it many, many years ago. That 45 years ago, we're still facing these same issues. Well, now we have everybody in the room so we can hear what all the issues are. And I'm not playing down any of them. The fish are important, the wildlife are important, the tribe issues are important. Obviously, to me, the human life and safety is primary importance. But the collaborative is important. But we're now to the point that we have to come up with solutions, and we have to be able to get outside the box. This is what I see as the biggest issue, is that we are still staying in our box. The agencies come and they say, well, yes, but I can't go outside this box. We need people in that room that can say, yes, our agency can go outside this box, because you know what? This mountain doesn't follow anybody's rules. And that's what we need. The authorization, that's the big elephant in the room. The Corps of Engineers, has only the authorized level to do what they can do. I will be the last one to hammer on the Army Corps of Engineers. They have been at these meetings. They have done what they can, but they can only do what Congress has authorized for them to do. And so part of it is back in 1980, when this whole thing blew up, the primary concern of everybody was flooding. We only knew about the issues of the infrastructures and about private properties and these other things later on. Well, that wasn't part of the authorization. So that authorization needs to be expanded to include these other elements that are now affecting our daily life, our quality of life. When we have that silt come down the river, we talk about healing the rivers healing themselves, that affects our fish, that affects our water quality, that affects so much of our life. And it's costly to us to keep putting money into these things. Also, it needs to be expanded. And then the appropriation. Of course, this is such a big issue that, it's going to take a lot of funds. And it's going to take funds from the federal government, it's going to take funds from the state, and it's going to take funds from the local. And we're going to need the organizations to get along. Why we hear about the Army Corps and these other agencies, a lot of times they have separate and individual priorities. And we need to work together to come up with solutions that, it may be hard for some of these agencies to swallow. But at the end of the day, we've got to come up with something that is going to move us from this point. Next slide, please. So again, my opinion, and maybe mine only, but human life and safety is the most important priority that we're talking about today. And we are below rain average for the last 6 years. Since 2019 was the last year that we had a significant amount over average rain. We're setting ourselves up for a perfect storm. The LOPs are dangerously low, the potential for vulnerability, and the time is of the essence. And we look at the elected officials in this room and say, we need your help. It is critical that you get involved. 90,000 people in this county depend on you getting involved. And I've said this to Congresswoman Perez, and I've said it to the representatives of of the governor and of Senator Cantwell and Senator Murray. We need to rally and we need to have that support all the way down through. I understand the SRS has issues about fish getting upstream, and I understand that, you know, and I wish we didn't have to be looking at a spillway, but we are about 15 years Johnny come lately on this thing. And the downstream or communities cannot afford not to have that next raise go on. I think I'm done with my slide presentation.
Question that came in. Are there studies that have been done? I don't know, you have the answer to this. Are there studies that have been done or are being done on impacts to fish and wildlife from the spillway rise? Have they looked at any of that? Does anybody have that? Okay, try and find something for her. And then another person just agreeing dredging is very common sense mitigation to prevent flooding and erosion in the near term, so.
I can tell you some of the impacts of it in the Cowlitz River. I was just there fishing last night, and there is so much sediment that it bottlenecks all the fish into certain areas of the river. And guess what else was fishing? Seals and sea lions. It bottlenecks all the fish into one spot of the river, and they're just right there picking them off. And I didn't have to work for the fishing game to see that.
No, go ahead, Mark. Yeah.
Dave. Unfortunately, we go back with all that history. I just want to make a couple points. You know, what we've heard from Dave is all true, but it's also what we heard 45 years ago with the Army Corps, because we didn't know. Okay, they did a great job. They came in here within 100 days. They dredged all of the eruption effects into the Cowlitz and the Columbia River, and they banked it everywhere. And I don't know how many of you were here when they did that, but it was pretty spectacular and a heck of a job. They also told the county that we weren't done. The county commissioners at that time put a 20-year moratorium in along the Cowlitz River construction and the Toutle. Yeah. And I know a little bit about that because I've served as your planning commission chair for a while. So we had a building freeze, basically, moratorium, and we had all these problems with the river, and it seemed to have been fixed because the Corps got things up and we had the SRS running and everything was going great. And we had 3.5 million visitors coming here and we were doing tourism. Then when 2000 came, there was no hearing. The building moratorium was lifted. Okay. The properties that we needed to dredge the river effectively and affordably were suddenly valuable again. They suddenly then became developable. Okay. I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, developable. And they started building. So we started building in harm's way because 20 years wasn't a long enough memory for us to remember what happened before. 265 homes were destroyed in 1980 when the eruption came down. Today, we probably have 3 times that in harm's way. Behind levees that are aging and a river that we now have a more expense to dredge. If you look at the Corps' reports and you read them as much as I do, because that's the only thing I have to do all winter, the Corps' hands are tied to come in and dredge the river because of cost per yard of dredging. It is cheaper to try to store it up in the North Fork of the Toutle River by far, but even they will tell you when you talk with them, it's not as directly effective as dredging in the Cowlitz or dredging at the Toutle. So as Dave nicely pointed out, you know, this is the elephant in the room for future generations. And while definitely health and life safety is the most important issue that we have to obtain to, I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, I love fish, wildlife, and habitat, but the health and public safety issue is the biggest. But I guess because I have more time off than everyone, I kind of think a little bit out of the box for the health and public safety. It's hard for me to believe that the best solution is to continue to store millions of yards of sediment in a river that is not designed to have it stored there, with no plan for stabilization or creating a more natural river coming down from Spirit Lake. And we haven't even mentioned the Spirit Lake issue, because that's another one. We live at the end of a river at a volcano. One of the big concerns and nightmares I have, and I shouldn't because I'm on the backside of the spillway, the dam, and several 100 feet above the river, is the seismic activity. There's a 4.8 earthquake today or last night in California. You know, there's always an earthquake somewhere on the West Coast. The seismic activity that we have that's supposed to be predicted and coming here is, you know, the next big thing is an earthquake. And that's why I asked the question of Mr. Thorne was the vulnerability to earthquake for that sediment to move. And I have those bad dreams of an earthquake hitting and all that sediment and this man-made structure that's 45 years going downstream, and here we go. So don't think when I talk about wanting to build more wood structures and develop a plan for the river that I'm not thinking of life safety. I'm thinking of long-term life safety, because we're dealing now with a 5 or 10 year fix. But I think the price that we will pay for the storage of just that sediment there won't be worth it in the long run. What I've proposed, what I've been trying to propose, and I also have been in contact with everyone who will talk to me in Washington, D.C., the Assistant Secretary of the Army who's in charge of Civil Works, is to ask for a simple feasibility study right now. The dates and work that they did was decided in 2017. I attend the seminars that we went through with the collaborative, and the Army Corps' own people, their best people that were in the last seminar we had, stated that any 6-month data that you have on a river is outdated. And that was in our presentation that we got. We're talking about 2017. I'm not talking about stopping this thing, maybe just pausing it so that we make sure we're doing the best possible situation and looking all the way up and downstream instead of just focused here. And Mr. Chairman, you are correct. The authorization has to come from Congress or the Senate. And one of our elected officials of the 3 that we have in this district, or any congressman in the United States, can ask for a review. The cost is about $175,000, at least that's what it was when they did that. And it would take about 4 to 6 months if they incorporated it. But they have to ask. So if we're really concerned here, like we should be, I would urge you as our local elected body to promote an ask of them officially to
Who will
do so.
that? Are you hearing?
Anyway, I appreciate you giving me the time.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you gentlemen putting this meeting together, because we haven't had a public forum like this to be able to discuss this big problem. I mean, I don't have all the solutions, but it's one that I would like to leave with the next generations having said, you know, they were pretty smart. They tried to do the best things so that we don't do something that they inherit and go, man, that was really stupid. You know? So thank you.
Commissioner.
Valerie Ringgold replied on the fish study. She gave some information to the person that was asking for that. So that's taken care of. Larry brought up earlier, and Mark, you talked about a little bit here, that the lake up there, you know, and they do try to keep it at a certain level, because the ash, you've talked about the ash, it's not a good base for anything. We sell some of it county, Storedall takes some of it, but they have to mix it with something to make it work for fill and stuff. The trouble with the ash is if you had an event, and we had an event on Tower Road, I'll tell you, I've said this before, Rock Creek on Tower Road, when the mountain blew, it came down and it washed up Rock Creek. Back in that time was a fish-bearing stream. It plugged that up, and it stood that way for over 40 years. And then there was an event that came through, and the 3.7s showed up, and it all came out just that quick. And it caused some damage to the people's property. Obviously, it took the road out. The point of that being is we have that lake up there that's been held back by this stuff for 40 plus years. You get 3.7s or you get 4.7s that happen, and that breaks away. I've heard reports of 14 feet of water in Longview. I mean, I've heard reports of more catastrophic than the mountain itself. So it's a big issue something up there. And I know Forest Service has got, I think, 3 or 4 different designs to try and solve some of that. But that's another thing that has to be addressed. We're talking about different things. to me, you're looking at that as one issue, the issue upstream to try and control some of that Colin talked about. Then the issues downstream is what are we gonna do with this stuff downstream? Because it keeps taking our banks. It's affecting, the cities. So it's really three different things. And I think that's a great idea. We need to go to Congress and you need to have a plan. This is what we want to see. And it doesn't have to be 5, 10, 20 pages. I'm a bullet point guy. Just give me a few things and have no problem talking about it. I just want to talk about the same things as everybody else is talking about.
Yeah, Rick, real quick. So first of all, it's my understanding that original dredge permit that the Corps had open when they dredged is still open. So it's not like they have to go through all the hoops to go get their own permit. That's still open. So it becomes an authorization issue to authorize and funding the appropriation. The second thing, and I've been working with Senator Wilson, who's offered to help me, and I don't want to speak for him if he's still in the room, but we're trying to put together a talking page. So everybody can be talking on the same page when we start talking to our federal and state delegation. So we're bringing up the same point. So it shows that we're all on the same page. So I would encourage, if you have certain points, to reach out to Senator Wilson and give him those points. I've sent him some. Obviously, that's going to be important because if we talk all with one voice about these are the higher priorities for us, then we're more likely going to be able to get a better response.
Yeah. And I agree with you, Dave. I'd love to go back there and say, hey, we work with the collaborative, we work with the port. This is what we think needs to happen up there, and we support that. I'd love to be able to do that. Yeah. Go ahead, Larry.
I'd like to mention the importance of semantics. We all know how complicated things get when you got all these different agencies and bureaucracies and everything else going on. And this is not necessarily a criticism of the gentleman from Fish and Game, but I think he used the word complex about 6 times. I would suggest that we replace complex with common sense, because too many times we get everybody gets hiding behind all the rules. And I think somebody mentioned it, the little boxes and everything else. And unless you got the right players in the room, everybody's afraid to get outside their box. So let's forget the complex. Yes, we know it's complex, but it's going to take a whole bunch of people with common sense to put together a plan that's going to work for everybody. So semantics are important.
We've gone about an hour and a half, and I don't mind going as long as you want to stay, but can I ask of something? I think we should do this again. But I would ask, and I probably asked since COG's kind of handling this a little bit, Bill, that maybe you work with the senator and work with different people. And if you give us some points that the next time we get together, we can go over and say, hey, we think you don't have to take my suggestion, but if I was looking at it, I'd say, what are we going to do with this lake up there? What are we going to do with the upper sit with debris? And what do we do with the bottom? Because I'd love to be able to go back when I go back and I sit and visit to say, hey, we've got a group of people that live this thing day to day, and we think we can make this work with this. How can you help us type thing? If I could make that ask, you think that's okay? Okay.
Just a quick note on your dredging permit, you say it's still active only if you have disposal sites. As you already mentioned, we've already occupied a bunch of those disposal sites. So
put houses on them, didn't we?
Right, we did. And those are the banks that are eroding away and filling the river back up. So anyway, the other would be, a first step would be to start immediately looking for and securing some disposal sites, because that's only going to get harder. And we know that ultimately it has to be disposed somewhere.
Yeah, thank you. That's true. And there are several sites that have been identified already. Again, we have to define how much material we're going to be taking out to know how many sites and to what acreage of sites that we need. But I would not let that stop us moving forward to actively seeking to do what we need to do with the dredging. It's just.
I hate to keep saying anything. A lot of people couldn't make it today either, 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. I talked to a lot of people, and I think the community would like to see some public outreach of what's going on. I mean, it's political, like you said, the best way to do that is get your base. And while we have a pretty good base here, it would be better if we had the 102,000, whatever it is, population of Cowlitz County.
Senator?
As Senator Wilson said, I just want to also thank Congresswoman Perez. She did come up and meet with a pretty good sized constituents, and she was very attentive. You know, now we just need to follow up, and along with the senators too.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And thank you for your patience, not knowing the agenda. I have another commitment here recently, so you may get the speed talk version. Dave is an expert.
I didn't know there was any other version.
Okay, you caught me on that one. Well, Dave, thank you for all the work that you've done. And everybody in this room is probably right to some extent. And there are some voices that are hard to speak for. For example, fish. I don't want to speak for predators. I don't want to speak for pinnipeds anymore. The Cowlitz River is plagued with, and the Toutle now, with overpredation and ruining what's fragile fish runs, including what used to be Kelso, the smelt capital of the world, is at jeopardy. So I'd like to also make sure that the water quality is a condition. But my office has been working this a while, and I did have a joint meeting with the congressional representative Perez just recently at the Port of Longview, in the county you had participated through the other commissioner not present today. But David's right. We have to keep the momentum going. So, Mr. Chairman, any and all comments, my office is currently drafting letters, layman type letters. And it has that naughty word in it called dredging. Believe me, Dave, it has the naughty word dredging in there. And dredge management planning is incredibly important. As Mr. Ron had just spoken recently on, it's not that simple anymore. I don't care how long the permit's for. That's never been the issue. The Port of Longview has been a victim, for example, of dredging issues and the very complex issues of just dredging alone. It's time to make something less complex, very simple, almost like let the dredging begin. But again, I mentioned the Port of Longview has been a victim because the Port of Longview has had to use taxpayer money to dredge the upper berths. And that's because a gift has been given by the Cowlitz River, which is to flush sedimentation out into that river. We all mentioned the public drinking water systems, as you brought up, and whatnot. These are important issues, but that is where we're currently at right now. We'll take any and all input. Our office is wide open to that. We'll be sharing the drafts to make sure we're going to go ahead. But the target list, we're going to expand the target list. It's okay to ask an elected servant, an elected official. That's great. But we're going to blanket. It's kind of a carpet bomb of, can you hear me now? It will go to the president of the United States. It will go to the top people at the Corps. It will go to the federal delegation, local leaders. And so what I'm looking for is really that when we draft this, we're looking for a lot of signatures. And holding public meetings is great, but I think that we may be far enough along now where we really do need some of the things we need done. A plan doesn't mean anything, obviously, until we turn it into an action plan. And speaking of money, there was an embarrassing point of time just in recent history when the Port of Longview and Cowlitz County had to somewhat loan money or front the money to the federal government to do bathymetric surveys in the Cowlitz River. And, we're prepared to help out the federal government, but ultimately the fiscal responsibility and the overall planning is with the federal government. It is a federal volcano that impacts our community. So we've already proven that the community wants to come together. We've pitched in money. It's almost like a GoFundMe. That's why I call it embarrassing. It's not supposed to work that way. So that's what we seek to do. So now we're interested in gathering up all your voices. I can't thank you enough for doing this. We have a ton of things in here, and I like to be on Dave's version of being a layman, keep the science a little where it's understandable. There's engineers and experts. But ultimately, who cares? I mean, let's face this. We have to live it. Whether you're a layman or you're a PhD, the rivers, the river system, the fish health, the recreational opportunities and the kind of the way we were song, that's what we need to be. So I do have to leave and thank you. So any and all comments, the public can hear me loudly. You've given me the format to do that, sir, and I do appreciate that, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. I've had a pretty good day. It's run a while. So seeing nothing else, I think we'll end this one, but I don't think this subject is something we're going to end. I think, Bill, you're taking away some stuff, and I know I see Representative Perez's staff over there. I know people will take away some stuff. I see governor's staff here. Appreciate you coming by. Yeah. And we appreciate all of you participating in this, and I thank my colleague. He's the one who really brought this and pushed to have everybody here. So I thank him for that. I think it was a good move, and I think we'll do it again. Okay?
Thank you.
With that, we will adjourn.